On this episode of Animal Outtakes, Stories of Survival, we introduce you to some incredible animals who beat the odds. Starting with the crested caracara and the cormorant, both all-around inspirations for overcoming big challenges. And we meet this beautiful bird who, despite severe injuries and a dire outlook, has made a complete turnaround. And of course, we can't leave Charlie out of a show like this. He was picked up from the streets of Sarasota and we're happy to report has made a full recovery. And later in the show, volunteers are working to help our coral reefs survive. This and much more straight ahead on Animal Outtakes. At Save Our Seabirds in Sarasota, Florida, their mission is to rescue and rehabilitate sick and injured wild birds. The ultimate goal is to release them back to their natural habitats. But once in a while, a bird does not make the kind of recovery needed for an ethical release. So when that happens, that bird becomes a resident at this avian sanctuary, and in doing so, also becomes an important lesson for us humans.
Armando is a crested caracara. He's a really unique bird that is commonly called a Mexican eagle, but that's a misnomer because they're not eagles at all. They are actually a type of falcon. There's only about 400 breeding pairs left. So this is a really unique species to see up close. They do live here locally and they expand all the way down to South America. Armando came to us after a really sad incident with a farmer. We believe that Armando was probably used to being fed by humans, which would explain his comfort with approaching another person. The thing is, when they approach people, they don't recognize that a friendly person versus an unfriendly person. They just associate people with food. So he went up to somebody who was not excited to see him. Unfortunately, this farmer decided to shoot him. I have such a hard time talking about it because it's just so sad. He wasn't a bonded pair and they do mate for life. Unfortunately, there were 3 fatalities. That was his mate and his 2 chicks. And he survived with a injured wing, and it healed and fused in a way that prevents him from flying. So you'll notice he has a bit of a sag there, and that's because the healing just didn't quite heal the right way. So he lives with us and he shares a really important message of why it's so key to never feed wildlife. And I think people view it as a harmless thing, and I know that people do it because they think that it's a helpful thing maybe to give them food. But unfortunately what that does is it trains them, it changes their natural behaviors, so then they start seeking out humans. And whether or not the human is nice or not, the other danger is that they end up going to areas they normally wouldn't be, so super urbanized areas that present a lot of other kinds of dangers like vehicle collisions and window strikes, things like that. So when you see wildlife, we always encourage people to please just observe them from afar and enjoy them from afar and don't interact with them. Just allow them to maintain their instincts and don't interfere with what they're doing because they definitely know what they're doing out there. So in his habitat, we have these branches at a lot of different levels, and that's to help him get around easier. It's an adaptation for him so he can explore different heights, because normally he would be able to fly there, but he can't anymore. So he gets to bound around on these different branches and explore the space in that way instead. So our other crested caracara is Leopold. Leopold has a similar injury, but a different cause that we're not completely sure on. We believe it was a vehicle collision, but he also has a wing that healed and fused in a strange way, so he's not able to fly anymore. They became fast friends because this is a type of raptor that is loosely social. Some raptors tend to be more solitary, but these guys tend to be more friendly with each other. So it was easy to move them in together. And next to us, we have Cupid, who in the wild, these guys would actually encounter each other quite often because they're both scavengers. Being a scavenger is a really important job in our ecosystem. Without birds like Armando and Leopold in the wild, we would have a very messy landscape that's filled with disease and things that ultimately impact humans. This is Fish William. He is a double-crested cormorant, and he is here because he was found orphaned as a very young one. He has an adapted pond. This is something specifically for him to have a comfortable life where it has a tapered, shallow entry so that he can get around a lot easier. We're not really sure what happened to his parents. It could have been intentional that they left him behind, or it could have been a disturbance to their colony. And that's kind of the sad reality in nature sometimes. They can detect something might not be right and they decide to leave it behind. And in the case of Fish, he has what's called rickets, and that occurs from a deficiency in things like calcium when he's developing as a young chick. So he needs to be eating anywhere from 30 to 50% of his weight on a daily basis, and if he's not getting that food from his parents, then those types of deficiencies start to kick in, and that affected his bone density. So as he was growing, his bones were very soft, so you might notice his feet point inward, and he can't fully spread his wings. They're actually stuck this way, so that prevents him from ever flying or diving properly, which those are skills he needs to survive. And he sees my pouch, so he's like, please, I will do whatever you want. Hi, buddy. Oh. They are a very sensitive creature, so because they are the type of bird that would roost and nest in these big giant colonies of anywhere from dozens to hundreds, if they encounter some kind of a disturbance to their nesting sites, it can cause the parents to abandon it completely, and that's very possible that's what happened. Things that would disturb them could be anything from an extreme weather event to maybe a person just getting too close on their boat. Maybe there is some kind of pollutant in the water, things like that. Maybe there's construction nearby. So when that happens, these guys get left behind and they don't usually go back for them. There are a multitude of different factors we consider when we look at a quality of life for a bird. We work with a veterinarian to determine the quality of life. So if he was in any kind of real pain or things were just not very humane for him, then we would opt to help him through that process. But because we're working with professional veterinarians and all that, they help us determine, yes, he does have a quality of life here, and yes, you can see he's very curious and very happy. I think all birds deserve a chance. They all deserve a second chance. I think for the most part, the things they encounter are because of human impact, and we owe it to them to give them that chance to thrive and live out a happy, fulfilling life. He's just a happy guy, even though he's got these, you know, abnormalities with the way he developed his wings and his feet. There's no reason to just, you know, rob him of a chance to thrive and enjoy his life. So Lady is in here with a young sandhill crane, and she is a wonderful surrogate mother to many colts, which is what the young ones are called. She helps to prevent them from imprinting. They have a really high imprint rate. So what she does is she shows them how to look for food, how to get the water, how to engage with other sandhill cranes, so that when we release them, they're welcomed into the wild. So you'll notice she's missing her left eye. She was on a golf course here locally, and unfortunately, a golfer decided that she was a pain and she was in the way. She was hanging out next to his golf ball and wouldn't move, and he decided to strike her repeatedly with his golf club. She is not a good candidate for release because of her injuries. She also can't really fly anymore. Long soaring movements are not a thing for her anymore, and with her impaired vision, it's really hard for her. She teaches all the young ones on how to be a real sandhill crane so they can go out into the wild and live their lives, and hopefully we don't see them back here.
If you'd like to learn more about the mission of Save Our Seabirds or how you can help, log on to saveourseabirds.org. And now we turn to a different kind of bird. This one, a captive bred exotic. At Birds of Paradise Sanctuary and Rescue, they say the road to second chances is paved with feathers. The Myakka location provides a safe haven for abused or unwanted exotic birds in hopes of re-socializing and rehoming eligible companion parrots. Often, founder Debbie Huckabee gets calls from people in distress, people who are dealing with struggles of their own and need help with their beloved pet, sometimes reflecting their own struggles. And when the call came in to help save a very sick Goffin cockatoo, time was of the essence.
This is Max. He's a Goffin cockatoo, and he's 36 years old, and he's a one-owner bird, which means that he was with his mom until she passed away. And then the family tried to take over and take care of him, but I think he probably went through some mourning, and then he started self-mutilating. And they let it get to a point where it was almost to the point of the end. I think Max gave up. The photo that they sent me initially, I wasn't sure that he was going to be alive when I got there. It was one of the saddest cases I've ever had, but it's one of the most rewarding, because he just turned right around and decided that he wanted to live. I gave him some pain medication right there in their living room. I got him out of the cage, gave him some pain medication, and sat there and just bawled right in their living room. It was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. He had severe infection. We thought he was going to have a blood transfusion, but he ended up not. So he was on like 3 or 4 medications, antibiotic, pain medication, and it was challenging, and he had to wear a hard collar, which I hate. And he didn't like it either, but it was a necessity in the beginning. The next day, I was so surprised. He slept in a little handicap cage in my bed with me because I needed to be able to hear him if something happened. And the next day, he was on my shoulder in a little sweater. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it, but just one day of someone caring and giving him the will to live, I think is why he made it, and the turnaround was so fast. They're very intelligent, number one, and they have emotions just like humans. So if indeed he was mourning his mom that he was with for 36 years, that's huge. And the children didn't know how to take care of him properly, so he was just left to languish in whatever, issue he was having. It's emotional. I think that first day, the day that after I picked him up, and I'd already started treating his wound, and he didn't even fight me. He didn't, and then he was on my shoulder, and I was like, okay, I guess you're here. You made it, bud.
Coming up next on Animal Outtakes, charming Charlie from the streets of Sarasota to the dens at Dante's. How a whole lot of love can make all the difference. That's next.
What happens to your pet if something happens to you? It's a tough question, but an important one. At Dante's Den Foundation, we offer a solution. It's called Lifetime Care. A way to ensure your pet continues to live the life you've always shared. It's a chance to determine exactly what happens to your beloved friend in the event of your passing. For more on how you can provide the kind of life your pet deserves, visit us at dantesden.org.
Welcome back. And now we bring you a survival story of the canine kind. Here at Dante's Den Foundation, we see all kinds of kinds. And I just knew when I got the call about Charlie that he'd have to be a dog we would save. I received a phone call from a lovely lady that resided in downtown Sarasota. And she was quite distressed. She found this dog just walking aimlessly in very, very bad shape, medically, and maybe a little mentally. And she said, please, please help me out. Well, we tried to get him into Dante's Den, but before we were able to do that, Animal Services came along and they said, don't worry, we'll take Charlie. So of course we called Animal Services and we work very beautifully with them. They help us out, we help them out. And I asked them about Charlie. They wanted to wait for the legal amount of days to see if anybody was going to claim Charlie. And if no one did, we were going to receive the phone call and bring Charlie to Dante's Den. Well, we were waiting, and that Monday we received a phone call. Come and get Charlie. So off we went, and he was apprehensive, and he definitely needed a bath. And you could tell that his eyes were saying, I really am kind of tired of walking, and I'd like to have some good food, and I'll do just about anything you want me to do because I need a home. So we brought Charlie back to Dante's Den, and we started our regular program of hugging him and loving him and holding him, and of course giving him a wonderful meal, and also checking him out medically. Now, he's had a lot of medical problems along the way. We wish that they could talk and tell us what the history was, but we have to do a lot of guessing. We think that perhaps he was used as a breeding dog somewhere along the way, and then for whatever reasons, either he escaped or he was just dumped. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of that now. People cannot keep their dogs going financially and otherwise. So what do? They dump the dogs. So we really don't know what Charlie's history was, but we do know that he had a hard time. We figured that Charlie is about 2 or 3 years old. He was a little downtrodden. He was a little beat mentally, and we wanted him to survive. He wanted to live, and he wanted a good life, and we were here to give it to him. Coming up next on Animal Outtakes, we're taking the survival story to another level. This one below the surface of the waters in the Florida Keys. How this team is making a difference, one coral at a time. Joining forces in the Florida Keys with a powerful mission to help revive one of the planet's most threatened ecosystems. Volunteers and scientists from the Florida Aquarium and Islamorada Conservation and Restoration Education recently outplanted more than 90 brain corals onto Davis Reef off of Islamorada. Corals were born and raised at the Florida Aquarium's Coral Conservation and Research Center in Apollo Beach. With each and every one of these young corals representing the massive effort underway to make a difference for the future of our Earth. This project is part of Florida's Coral Reef Restoration and Recovery Initiative through the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Officials say the initiative aims to build the infrastructure, technology, skilled workforce, and logistics needed by 2050 to support the long-term recovery of at least 25% of Florida's coral reef.
As part of the Florida Aquarium, we're so excited to be here today to not only see some of the corals that we have raised from itty-bitty larvae that settled at our facility and have grown out under our care, but actually see them go back out in the ocean, or even see them, months or years later. So it's really impactful for our staff, but also this partnership with iCare and Key Dives and being able to just come out here and help and be a part of this and this beautiful place in the Keys is just such a wonderful opportunity for us.
Boy, I just love getting these corals. They're so beautiful. I don't get to see so much of this in the wild anymore, especially some of the brain corals. I mean, they're largely gone out on the reef. And I remember the first time you all came down and there was these big, beautiful, fluffy, bouldering brain corals. It was just so fulfilling knowing that, all right, there's a chance. We're gonna make this work. And we've learned a lot since then in the experiments of what works on the reef with that species, let alone some of the other species that we've worked with. So yeah, getting those corals that day was really special.
Stay with us. There's more Animal Outtakes coming up next.
Animal Outtakes is produced by Dante's Den Foundation, a nonprofit group dedicated to creating the best life for dogs. If you would like to learn more about Dante's Den, donate, or volunteer, visit our website, dantesden.org.
And we close this week's show with a reminder from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Manatees are on the move. It's the time of year when these gentle giants are swimming to warmer waters around the state. Residents and visitors are being asked to be mindful, to watch for the manatees when out on the water. And when water temps drop below 68 degrees Fahrenheit, Florida manatees seek refuge at springs, power plants, and other warm water sites. Some tips from the experts: wear polarized glasses when boating. Even though manatees are large, they can blend in. Go slow and pay attention to the rules in the manatee protection zones. According to FWC, boat strikes are a major threat to manatees, and officers will take action when necessary if boaters aren't following the law. If you happen to find a group of manatees at a warm water site, give them space. Disturbing them can make them swim out of the protected areas and expose them to potentially life-threatening water temps. So many do so much in our state to protect the manatees. So let's all do our part. We hope you had fun and learned a thing or two along the way. And we'll be back here again next week with even more animals and some engaging and educational encounters. Until then, thanks for watching. Starting with a crested, what?
Cormorant and a caracara.
Yeah.
Starting with a crested
Crested what?
and a cormorant.
All right, let me see that cormorant or whatever. Starting with a crested caracara and a cormorant. Cormorant. I'm warming up. What is it? Cormorant. Okay. All around inspirations for overcome.
This is Fish William. He's a double-crested I can't do it either.
Again, then. I'll let Marcia know.
She's not alone. Even the one who spends the days here can't do it.
Coughing. You know, I don't like this script today.